Hola estudiantes, hoy empezamos hablando de días, del día. El día, es difícil leer en naranja. El día, en rojo mejor. El día. ¿No? En el día tenemos mañana, tarde y noche. Mañana, tarde y noche. Morning, afternoon, and night. El día tiene mañana, tarde y noche. Pero también, hablando en días, los días, plural, tenemos la semana, y en la semana, claro, tenemos domingo, lunes, martes, miércoles, jueves, viernes y sábado. Una semana, 7 días. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Entonces, hoy es martes. Hoy. Today is Tuesday, as I record. Hoy es martes. Entonces, ayer fue lunes. Ayer, lunes. En el futuro, mañana. Mañana. Hoy es martes, mañana es miércoles. Ayer fue lunes. So today is Tuesday. Ayer fue lunes. Yesterday was Monday. Mañana, miércoles. Entonces, hoy, ayer, mañana. Hablando de días. Te lo dejo aquí. I leave it here for you. Te lo dejo aquí para copiar. So today we get to go back to our book, Complete Spanish Grammar. Estamos en el capítulo 4 de Complete Spanish Grammar. Y el capítulo 4 es the preterite tense. O el pretérito. The preterite tense o el pretérito. ¿Qué es el pretérito? Vamos a explicar. Let's explain. Vamos a explicar el pretérito. The preterite is the simple past. I walked, I swam, I ran, I spoke. Now it's important to realize that it's that simple past, that finished simple past action. It is I walked, not I was walking, not I had been walking, not we might have walked. Okay? All of those have some sort of relationship with the past, but it is not the simple past. El pretérito. I walked. Plain and simple. Now, capítulo 4, chapter 4, is one of my absolute favorite chapters in this book. So it is a straightforward chapter. It deals with just the concept of the simple past and has a lot of great examples and exercises in it. I'm going to enjoy talking through this with you. I'm going to go over a lot of the material in the chapter myself here in order to help you absorb it. So do take notes as I conjugate verbs. We'll do a couple of the exercises ourselves here in this video. And then that will prepare you to go in and read the materials in the chapter. So before we dive into capítulo 4, I want to read Lucas 22:19. And you'll see that with the past tense, we'll have access to a bunch of these verbs. So I'll read it, and then I'll go through word by word with you all. You're welcome to pause the video, grab your Bibles, and read along with Lucas 22:19, or simply read along on the whiteboard. Y tomó el pan, y dio gracias, y lo partió y les dio, diciendo, esto es mi cuerpo, que por vosotros es dado, haced esto en memoria de mí. Lucas 22:19. All right, so let's go through word by word. And you'll see that some of the demonstratives pop up here as well. And he took, he being Jesus, and he took the bread and gave thanks and divided it, shared it, split it, and gave it to them, saying, this is my body that for y'all is given. Do this in memory of me. Okay, so the verbs I have underlined, diciendo, dado, and haced, are different tenses. Okay, we have a present progressive, we have a past participle, and we have an imperative here. Do this. Otherwise, we have a lot of these preterits. All right, so with the preterit, we're taking our first step to be able to interact with everything in Spanish, right? We have the present, and now we have the preterit. And he took the bread and gave thanks and divided it and said to them, and gave them, saying, this is my body that for y'all is given. Do this in memory of me. And you'll notice that for the present, it would be el toma, or for the past, it's el tomó. El tomó, el partió, el dio. And we're going to be looking at exactly that. This obviously is from the Lord's Supper, or as we call it, la Santa Cena. La Santa Cena, the Holy Supper. Okay, so if you go to página 36 de tu libro, página 36 de tu libro, you will see an AR verb, an ER verb, and an IR verb conjugated into the past tense. And we're going to look at all three of them now. Okay? So, the first verb given in the book is nadar. Nadar is to swim. Nadar, to swim. I swam, you swam, he swam. We swam, y'all swam, they swam. Okay? All different words in Spanish. Yo, and here, guys, we're seeing why I'm such a meanie about accents. If you see an accent, you gotta hit it hard because it changes the meanings. Yo nadé, tú nadaste, él nadó. Nosotros nadamos, vosotros nadasteis, ellos nadaron. Okay, and actually, let's get rid of that. Sometimes I let a little Portuguese leak in. All right. Nadé, nadaste, nadó, nadamos, nadasteis, nadaron. All right. So I'm going to underline the new endings, right? So we took off the AR, we were just left with the stem, nad. So then it's nade, aste, o. Amos, astes, adum. Right? So note that the past tense for nosotros is the same as the present tense. We swim, nosotros nadamos. We swam, nosotros nadamos. And it's strictly by context that you have to know. Okay, so nosotros, it's the same for the preterite and for the simple present. So, as always, you can choose to memorize nade, nadaste, nadó, nadamos, nadastes, nadaron, and bring that to whatever AR verb you're looking at, or you can memorize aste, o, amos, astes, aron. Okay? You'll see that there's a connection. So in the present tense, vosotros nadáis. So in the past tense, vosotros nadastes. All right? In the present tense, ellos nadan, ellos nadaron. So we're like adding a syllable to make it into the past tense. All right? Same really with tú. Tú nadas present, tú nadaste past tense. Nade, nadaste, nadó, nadamos, nadastes, nadaron. That is your example AR verb. So here's our ER verb, comer, to eat. And so I'll point out a couple of things, but most of you guys can hear how I pronounce this. Yo comí, tú comiste, él comió. Nosotros comimos, vosotros comisteis, ellos comieron. Comí, comiste, comió. Comimos, comisteis, comieron. Notice all the I's, particularly in nosotros. This is an ER verb, nosotros comimos. You can go ahead and pause the video now so you make sure you can write this down. Okay, so finally we have the IR verb, vivir, which is to live. Vivir, 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 to live. Yo viví, tú viviste, él vivió. Nosotros vivimos, vosotros vivisteis, ellos vivieron. Viví, viviste, vivió. Vivimos, vivisteis, vivieron. Okay? Notice that in this case, the IR is the same in the present and the past. So we live, nosotros vivimos, y'all live, nosotros, we lived, nosotros vivimos. All right? So the AR and the IR are going to be the same. Viví, viviste, vivió, vivimos, vivisteis, vivieron. Go ahead and pause and take note. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is to go over all the exercises, in 4.1. So you've been on página 36. Vamos a página 37, 4.1, 4.1. There are 8 exercises there in which, to be correct, all you have to do is insert that verb in the past tense. We're going to go ahead and translate them as well. So we're going to do this together. So if you don't have your book on you yet, which you should have had, but if you don't have it on you yet, go ahead and pause and go grab it. And we're going to go over each one verbally, but as you read along. And since you have the past tenses written down, you can just go and grab the answer before I give it to you. So número 1. Dos hombres, blanco, blank, white. Dos hombres, blanco. Dos cuadros de Frida Kahlo en una galería. Dos hombres, blanco. Dos cuadros de Frida Kahlo en una galería. Frida Kahlo is a very famous Mexican painter, perhaps the most famous outside of Mexico. And one of the things she's famous for is having a mustache and being a bit of a degenerate. It's a sad testimony to arte moderna, but there it is. So it's talking about dos cuadros de Frida Kahlo. Cuadros are frames or paintings. in this case, right? So there are two pictures of Frida Kahlo that are up in a galeria. So two men have stolen. That's what robar is, to steal, right? To rob, to steal. So how are we going to make that the past tense? What's the past tense of robar, to steal? So you should have dos hombres robaron dos cuadros de Frida Kahlo en una galería. Okay? Número dos. Perder. Perder is to lose. Perder is to lose. La Galería Blanco, sus pinturas más famosas. Take a moment, see if you can translate for yourself. Perder is to lose, so we're going to have to say that La Galería lost. La Galería lost sus pinturas más famosas, its most famous paintings. So, La Galería perdió sus pinturas más famosas. La Galería perdió sus pinturas más famosas. Número 3, correr. Correr is to run. So, yo blanco detrás de un sospechoso, pero desapareció. So they've already put in a past tense verb for us. Okay, so they've told us what sospechoso is, a suspect, a suspicious one. Detrás is behind. Desaparecer is to disappear. So this should be in Spanish a version of the following English. I ran behind a suspect, but he disappeared. Pero desapareció. We're going to need correr in the past tense, which is, so for yo corrí detrás de un sospechoso, pero desapareció. He disappeared. Corrí. 4. Los guardias de la galería no blanco las armas. And they've told us what disparar means, to fire, to shoot a gun. Los guardias de la galería no shot las armas. So the guards of the gallery didn't shoot their guns. So shot in the past tense for English, but our helping verb does the past for us when it's a negative. Didn't shoot. Okay, so we're going to say no, but we still have to conjugate into the past tense. So what's the past tense of disparar for guardias, for third person plural? Disparar, guardias are third person plural. Los guardias de la galería no dispararon las armas. And hear that extra syllable. So one of the drums I've been beating through this class is going ahead and speaking slowly, trying to find the rhythm of Spanish, because your tendency as an English speaker is going to be to squeeze syllables together so you can get a word out in the same amount of time. That's how English works. That's why we have so many contractions. Okay, but that's not how Spanish works. So it'll be a lot easier for you to say all those syllables if you're taking your time and giving each syllable their due, instead of following your English speaker instinct of squeezing it together. That's why we trip over ourselves so much. So take your time saying dispararon, dispararon. Pretend you're Italian and it's a sunny day and everything is easy and breezy. Dispararon. No tenemos prisa, no tenemos prisa. We have no hurry. Los guardias de la galería no dispararon las armas. Ok, número 5. Marcelo y yo, blank, sospechar. You probably suspect. Sospechar means suspect. Marcelo y yo, blanco, que los guardias cooperaron con el robo, or the robbery. And notice here's another example of giving each syllable their due in the word cooperaron. Not only is it a past tense, it's got that extra syllable, but it's got two O's next to each other, and each of those O's is in a different syllable. Cooperaron. Cooperaron. So we got to find that rhythm. That's something we'll work on. So we need to suspect in the past tense for Marcelo y yo, which would be nosotros, right? So nosotros for sospechar in the past tense. Marcelo y yo sospechamos que los guardias cooperaron con el robo. Marcelo and I suspected that the guards cooperated with the robbery. Seis. Seis es una pregunta, it's a question. So we need escuchar in the past tense for tú. And escuchar is to hear. So, Blanco la noticia del robo por la radio. Did you hear? So, right, so now we're seeing that separation. Fewer helping verbs in Spanish, way fewer. Did you hear the news of the robbery by the radio, through the radio, through the radio? That's how we'd say it in English. Okay, so how we're going to do escuchar in the past tense for tú. ¿Escuchaste la noticia del robo por la radio? ¿Escuchaste la noticia del robo por la radio? Look at me. La radio, la radio. ¿Escuchaste la noticia del robo por la radio? Ay, ay, ay. La radio, la radio. See, even I have trouble. All right, número 7. Un agente de policía. The verb is salir, to go out, to leave. Un agente de policía blanco en un carro de patrulla para buscar a los ladrones. So a police agent, a police officer, went out in a patrol car to search for the thieves. Ladrón is thief. So we need salir in the past tense for un agente de policía. And actually, agente is masculine, so we now know, because it's una agente, that this is a police woman. Okay, so we need salir for her. So we're going to go with third person singular. Una agente de policía salió en un carro de patrulla para buscar a los ladrones. Finalmente, número 8. Comprar. Comprar is to buy. So, blanco ustedes el periódico para leer esta noticia. Periódico is magazine. Leer is to read. Blanco ustedes el periódico para leer esa noticia. So we need comprar in the past tense for ustedes, not vosotros. So we've done very little work with usted and ustedes so far. So the third person, so the usted gets conjugated as a third person. Okay, so it's you, but it's formal. It gets conjugated as a third person. So it's going to be third person plural because it's ustedes. So it's compraron. Compraron ustedes el periódico para leer esa noticia. Did you buy a magazine to read this news? All right, so there we have it. Remember some of my tips about pronunciation. Taking your time, giving each syllable its due, right? We sometimes feel pressure when we're maybe giving a presentation or something in English. We want to sound erudite, so we want to establish that right rhythm where big words don't seem to give us trouble, so we say them, with efficacy and speed. No need for that in Spanish. All right, so sospecharon, dispararon. We'll just take our time. If we speak faster, everything kind of goes faster. We don't squeeze individual words like in English. Hay una parte importante en la página 42. Página 42, hay una parte importante. There's an important part. Okay, and so this is an orthographic mostly, so a writing-based thing to be aware of. And all I'm going to do right now is just make you aware of it. But they talk about 3 verbs, leer, oír, and construir. In the third person, there are certain verbs, okay, er and ir, always, where you need to use a y. Yo leí, tú leíste, and then you would think it might be él leo. But the language has evolved, so people say leyó. Leí, leíste, leyó. And so the way to write that is actually with a y. And that's just something you need to run into. And as you run into it more and more, you'll be comfortable remembering it yourself. If you were to say el leo without that y, you would almost certainly be understood, but it's not correct and it's not what people say. So, él leyó. Also in the third person plural. Ellos leyeron. Okay, so it's not an irregular conjugation so much as it is an orthographic standard. And that little section has several verbs that fall into this sort of spelling. And you want to be able to recognize this in the third person, both singular and plural. All right, so to close this video, we're going to do exercise 4.5 together. So open to 4.5, 4.5, and I'll do these exercises with you as you follow along. And I just want you guys to get a little more accustomed to hearing the past tense and seeing it be used. So all of these are for Carlos y yo. So at the beginning you see in the instructions, Carlos y yo pasamos el fin de semana juntos. Pasar was one of those 25 verbs, right? So it means to pass, but more often than to pass, you'll hear it being used to spend time, to pass time, pasar. So Carlos and I spent the weekend together. Carlos y yo pasamos el fin de semana juntos. Okay, so Carlos y yo bought a TV to watch movies. Okay, so bought, buy is comprar. So here we go. Carlos y yo compramos una televisión para mirar películas. Carlos y yo compramos una televisión para comprar películas. And you should be following along, and I'll do this word for word as much as possible. Dos. Carlos y yo ate Mexican food, drank a soda, and washed the dishes. Okay, so we have three verbs here. Ate, to eat is comer, to drink is beber, and to wash, this one may be new for you, to wash is lavar, lavar, L-A-V-A-R, lavar. So, Carlos y yo comimos comida mexicana, bebimos un refresco y lavamos los platos. Número 3. Carlos y yo visited my Aunt Matilde. So visit. To visit in English, in Spanish, you guys may know this one, it is a cognate, so it's visitar. Carlos y yo visitamos a mi tía Matilde. Here we see another manifestation of something we've talked about a little bit in class, which is when a verb directly impacts or influences the object, we usually put a. So, Carlos y yo visitamos a mi tía Matilde. Número 4. Carlos y yo arrived at 3 o'clock and chatted with my aunt. Okay, so to arrive is llegar, as you know, of course. Arrive is to llegar. To chat is a very fun word. It's charlar. Charlar. C-H-A-R-L-A-R. I wonder what they chose for chat. Let's see. I might have been in the previous chapter for them. Yes. I'm going with charlar. So, Carlos y yo llegamos a las 3 horas y charlamos con mi tía. Finally, number 5, Carlos y yo realized that Matilda's dog is very ugly. Okay, some words that are from the very beginning of this class. Okay, so to realize is dar cuenta. Okay, if we use the cognate, this is a tricky one, it's a false friend. So one of the meanings of realize in English is to make something real. But usually that's not how we use it. All right? The normal meaning of realize in English is simply to become aware. Right? And that's how it's being used here. We realize that Matilda's dog is very ugly. But in order to do that, we're actually not going to be able to use realizar, because realizar means to make something real, to make something happen. So it's dar cuenta. Okay, so you give account, you give story. Dar cuenta is to realize something. Okay? So, Carlos y yo dimos cuenta de que el perro de Matilde es muy feo. Carlos y yo dimos cuenta de que el perro de Matilde es muy feo. Okay? Ahí está. A bunch of past tenses for nosotros. So, you guys are about to get the Thanksgiving break. Fabulous. That means we get to rejoice in all of chapter 4. I told you it's one of my favorite chapters. So, do all of chapter 4. You've been prepared for everything in the chapter, except perhaps the irregulars. I do want you to do the irregulars. And there are a couple of lists of verbs. Many of them will be familiar with you. Many of them will be familiar to you, particularly if you were diligent in studying those 25 most common AR verbs. You will be expected to be conversant with the verb lists, all of those verbs. So do all the exercises and reading in chapter 4 and all of the verbs. And then on the Thursday after Thanksgiving, then we will be able to do all those exercises, look at the exercises together, and move forward into a glorious future, which will now include 2 tenses. And they're going to start coming a little thicker and faster, and we'll find that we're a lot more conversant than even just a few weeks ago in Spanish. So I'm excited about this. I hope you guys are as well. So everything in chapter 4 is what your assignment is. Remember that memorizing lists is a lot easier with a partner, so reach out to classmates and drill each other together. Use the flashcards in the language labs. It's a great way to memorize. All right, so long everyone. Ciao todos.